Imagine standing inside a vast stone hall just before noon. The air is cold, even in summer. Smoke from hearth fires clings to heavy wooden beams. Servants move quietly, carrying bread and knives, while guards watch every doorway. No food is on the table yet, and no one dares touch anything before the ruler arrives. In the Middle Ages, a royal meal was not comfort, it was tension, ritual, and power made visible. What a king ate, when he ate, and who was allowed to watch was as important as any law he signed. In the Middle Ages, food at a royal table was never simply about eating. It was a daily expression of authority, belief, hierarchy, and survival, shaped as much by religion and season as by wealth. To understand how medieval kings and courts actually ate, we must strip away the fantasy of endless banquets and look instead at routines, restrictions, and deliberate displays of power. On most ordinary days, a king did not dine extravagantly. Meals followed a rhythm governed by daylight, church bells, and fasting calendars. Breakfast, as we understand it, rarely existed. Eating early was often associated with weakness or gluttony. Most nobles consumed their first substantial meal late in the morning, after prayers, administrative duties, and court audiences. This meal, commonly referred to as dinner, carried the greatest nutritional weight of the day. Supper came before nightfall and was noticeably lighter, especially in earlier centuries, when artificial lighting was limited and night activity was discouraged. The ordinary royal diet was heavy by modern standards, but monotonous by medieval ones. Bread formed the foundation of every meal, not merely as food, but as a symbol of stability and order. For kings and high nobles, bread was white, soft, and made from carefully sifted wheat flour. Its pale color alone signaled privilege. Darker bread made from rye or barley marked lower status even within the same hall. Bread trenchers, thick slices used as plates, absorbed sauces and grease and were later given to servants or the poor, reinforcing hierarchy even after the meal ended. Meat was frequent but controlled. Beef, mutton, pork, and poultry appeared regularly, roasted over open fires or boiled in large cauldrons. Fresh meat required precise timing and constant slaughter, which made it risky. As a result, preserved meat dominated even royal kitchens. Salted pork, smoked beef, and dried sausages ensured survival during shortages and travel. The abundance of meat did not mean variety. Repetition was normal, and luxury lay in preparation rather than choice. Vegetables played a quieter but essential role. Leeks, onions, cabbages, peas, lentils, and beans formed the backbone of daily nourishment. These ingredients were slow cooked into thick pottages that simmered for hours, filling the hall with earthy smells. The king's pottage differed only in enrichment, more fat, imported spices, almond milk instead of water, but the base remains the same. Vegetables carried little prestige, yet without them, survival would have been impossible. Fruit highlighted the fragility of medieval abundance. Apples and pears could be stored through winter, while plums and cherries were preserved or dried. Soft fruits like berries were rare treats consumed quickly before spoilage. Honey sweetened sauces and drinks long before sugar became widely available. Sweetness itself was associated with medicine and balance, not indulgence. Feast days transformed the meaning of food entirely. These events were political fodder, aligned with religious calendars, dynastic weddings, military victories, or diplomatic visits. Feasts were not about eating more, but about displaying excess. Dozens of dishes passed the table, each arranged to reinforce the ruler's dominance. Spectacle mattered more than consumption. Animals arrived whole and intact. Roasted beasts appeared with heads, wings, or skins reattached to emphasize power over nature. Exotic birds such as swans, peacocks, cranes, and herons symbolized nobility and control of land and water. Their taste mattered less than their visibility. Elaborate jellies molded into coats of arms, bread towers rising like architecture, and dishes colored gold with saffron communicated wealth without words. Religion imposed strict limits even during abundance. Fasting rules shaped royal meals for nearly half the year. On fast days, meat from land animals was forbidden, but the table did not grow humble. Instead, fish dominated. Rivers, lakes, and seas became sources of power. Fresh fish was expensive and logistically demanding. Speed, salt, and labor determined access. Royal tables featured salmon, eel, lamprey, pike, and sturgeon, some species legally reserved for rulers. Almond milk replaced dairy during fasts, imported almonds standing in for local livestock. Butter gave way to oil, often shipped from distant regions. Even restriction became an opportunity to display reach and control. The setting of the meal reinforced authority. In great halls, eating was public. The ruler sat elevated, sometimes alone, while courtiers arranged themselves below in strict order. Every movement followed protocol. Dishes passed through multiple servants, tasters sampled food for poison, announcements interrupted silence. Eating was slow, visible, and controlled. Private dining emerged gradually. By the late Middle Ages, rulers increasingly ate in smaller chambers with trusted companions. These meals were quieter and more comfortable, yet ritual remained. Hands were washed, linens arranged, and carving followed tradition. Even in privacy, power shaped posture and behavior. Travel exposed the limits of royal comfort. Kings moved constantly, and feeding a mobile court strained local resources. Bread, ale, and preserved meat traveled with the household, while fresh food was requisitioned from surrounding lands. Hospitality was expected, but often devastating. Villages could be stripped of supplies overnight. Meals on the road were colder, simpler, and eaten wherever shelter allowed. Yet entitlement to food was never questioned. Some of the most valued items on the table offered little nourishment. Spices traveled vast distances through dangerous trade routes. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and nutmeg preserved food, masked spoilage, and demonstrated global connections. Sugar, still rare, functioned as both medicine and luxury. Saffron colored dishes golden, turning food into a visual symbol of wealth. Medieval tastes ignored modern boundaries. Sweet and savory mixed freely. Meat was paired with dried fruit, honey, and spices. Offal was prized. Blood thickened sauces. Cheese aged in cellars, traveling better than fresh milk. Nothing edible was wasted. Seasonality ruled all. Winter relied on preservation. Spring brought hunger. Summer offered abundance and risk. Autumn meant slaughter and storage. Royal tables reflected these cycles, regardless of wealth. Over centuries, royal eating evolved. Early courts were practical and mobile. Later courts formalized dining into ceremony. Privacy increased, kitchens specialized, and written cookbooks refined taste. Yet famine, plague, and war always lingered nearby. In the end, medieval royal food was never simply sustenance. It was a language of power. Every loaf, every fish, every spice reinforced order and belief. Authority was not only worn on the crown, it was consumed daily at the table. Beyond the visible table, an entire hidden world made royal meals possible. Medieval kitchens were vast, chaotic spaces filled with heat, smoke, and constant motion. They were often built as separate structures to reduce the risk of fire, yet close enough to serve food while it was still warm. Inside, dozens of workers labored simultaneously. Butchers breaking down carcasses, bakers tending ovens, scullions hauling water, and cooks stirring cauldrons large enough to feed hundreds. Cooking itself was not refined in the modern sense. Precise temperatures did not exist. Timing relied on experience, smell, and sound. A roast was judged by the color of dripping fat. A stew was ready when it thickened just enough to cling to a spoon. Mistakes were common, and waste was inevitable. Food safety depended less on cleanliness and more on salt, spice, and luck. Hierarchy ruled the kitchen as strictly as the hall. Master cooks held significant power, sometimes earning salaries comparable to minor nobles. Their knowledge of supply chains, preservation, and ceremonial presentation made them indispensable. Below them worked apprentices, servants, and enslaved laborers, whose names were never recorded. A mistake in the kitchen could mean disgrace, punishment, or dismissal. In extreme cases, it could mean execution, especially if poisoning was suspected. Fear of poison haunted medieval courts. Political instability, rival claims, and frequent betrayal made every meal a potential threat. This fear shaped how food was prepared and served. Tasters sampled dishes before the ruler ate. Seals protected wine barrels. Ingredients were inspected, trusted suppliers favored. Even so, rumors of poisoned cups and fatal feasts circulated constantly, reinforcing the sense that eating was never entirely safe. Drinks mattered as much as food. Clean water was unreliable, even in palaces. As a result, ale and wine dominated the royal table. Ale was thick, weak by modern standards, and consumed daily by all ages. Wine, often imported, marked prestige. Spiced wines were served warm, especially in winter, believed to aid digestion and balance the body. Drinking followed ritual too. Who poured, who drank first, and who shared the cup all carried meaning. Medical beliefs deeply influenced diet. Medieval medicine was governed by humoral theory, which divided the body into balances of heat, cold, moisture, and dryness. Foods were classified accordingly. Beef was considered hot and dry, fish cold and moist, wine warming, vegetables cooling. Meals were designed not just to satisfy hunger, but to maintain balance. Overindulgence was seen as dangerous, weakening the body and spirit alike. This belief system justified restriction even among the wealthy. A king who ate too heavily risked illness, lethargy, or moral criticism. Moderation was praised publicly even when abundance was available. Displays of restraint became another form of power, proof that the ruler commanded food without being ruled by it. Gender shaped access to food as well. Queens and noblewomen often ate separately or in smaller groups. Their diets were lighter, shaped by expectations of modesty and medical advice. Pregnancy, fertility, and menstruation influenced what women were encouraged or forbidden to eat. Certain foods were believed to inflame desire or weaken virtue. Even at the highest levels of society, control over the body extended to the plate. Children at court experienced food differently. Young nobles were often taught restraint early, learning when to eat, how to sit, and how to use utensils properly. Meals became lessons in discipline. Excessive appetite was corrected. Hunger was tolerated. Through food, hierarchy was taught long before authority was exercised. Religious symbolism permeated everything. Meals began and ended with prayer. Food was seen as a gift from God, yet also a test of discipline. Gluttony ranked among the deadliest sins. Even kings were expected to demonstrate piety through fasting and restraint. Failure to do so risked public criticism, sermons, and political damage. Periods of crisis revealed how fragile abundance truly was. During famine, royal tables shrank dramatically. Bread quality declined. Meat disappeared. Even spices were reduced. Courts attempted to maintain appearances, but scarcity left marks. Chroniclers recorded years when kings ate little better than their subjects, moments when power could not escape hunger. Plague altered eating habits further. Fear of contamination led to changes in preparation, avoidance of certain foods, and increased reliance on spices believed to purify the air and body. Meals became quieter, more anxious. Abundance no longer guaranteed safety. By the late Middle Ages, shifts were underway. Greater privacy, printed cookbooks, and specialized dining spaces transformed how rulers ate. Forks appeared slowly. Individual plates replaced shared dishes. Taste became more personal, less symbolic, yet tradition never vanished entirely. In every era, the royal table reflected the world beyond it. War, trade, faith, disease, and climate shaped what appeared on the plate. Power could summon food, but it could not escape reality. Medieval kings did not eat like characters in legends. They ate within limits, imposed by belief, fear, season, and necessity. Their meals were structured, symbolic, and deeply political. To eat was to rule, but also to submit to forces larger than any crown. And when the hall finally emptied, when servants cleared the trenchers and extinguished the fires, what remained was not luxury, but the quiet truth of survival. Even at the highest table in the land, food was never guaranteed. It was negotiated, displayed, feared, and controlled, one meal at a time. As night settled over the stone walls and torches burned low, the royal table was cleared. What remained was not the memory of flavors, but the echo of order. Every meal had played its part. Every dish had spoken a language understood by everyone in the hall, who ruled, who served, and who watched in silence. In the Middle Ages, eating was never a private act for those in power. Even when the king dined alone, the rules followed him. Hands were washed, prayers were spoken, food was cut and served according to tradition. These rituals were not empty habits, they were rehearsals of control, repeated daily until hierarchy felt natural and inevitable. The royal table taught lessons without words. It taught obedience through seating. It taught loyalty through service. It taught restraint through fasting and discipline. Those who ate closest to the ruler learned their place not through titles, but through proximity to bread, meat, and wine. For the people watching from below, these meals reinforced distance. The abundance they saw was real, but unreachable. The power was visible, yet untouchable. Food became a symbol, not of comfort, but of separation. And yet, beneath the ceremony, medieval kings remained human. They felt hunger, they feared poison, they endured illness, scarcity, and loss. Their food could display dominance, but it could not guarantee safety. War disrupted supply. Weather destroyed harvests. Disease ignored rank. When famine came, crowns offered little protection. When plague spread, spices failed. When routes closed, even kings waited. In those moments, the table lost its theater and returned to its original purpose, survival. Over time, dining grew quieter. Power moved behind walls. The hall gave way to chambers. Spectacle softened into routine. But the legacy of medieval eating never vanished. Modern banquets, diplomatic dinners, and formal state meals still echo these old rules. Who sits where? Who speaks when? Who is served first? The medieval table reminds us that food has always been more than nourishment. It is structure, it is memory, it is control made tangible. In a world without refrigeration, without safety, without certainty, every meal carried risk. Every bite was shaped by belief, fear, and authority. Kings ruled from thrones, but they also ruled from tables. And when the last candle burned down, when servants carried away the remains, power lingered, not in gold or stone, but in the rituals repeated again the next day. Because in the Middle Ages, to eat was not just to live, it was to rule.